You good? Okay. You good? All right. Good evening. Thank you. Welcome to our board meeting this evening. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 7:06. If you could, 7:05. If you could join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is approval of minutes. This is from our meeting, our regular meeting on May 9th, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve?
You have a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Buster. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. King. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. We'll move on to the next section, our general functions, and the first item is staff, student, and community recognitions. Mr. Kruth?
Thank you, President Pratt and members of the board. And we are into the summer break, and so we're a little lighter on staff, student, and community recognitions from the majority of the staff, but we do have one stalwart here, Ms. Sarah Bates, to present her staff recognition. Mrs. Bates.
Thank you, Superintendent Kruth, President Pratt, and members of the board. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to brag on my staff a little bit. I have several recognitions this evening. I first want to recognize Sharon Hodges-Owen and Brittany Davis. They are special educators on my campus, and they have just outstanding and excellent leadership of our special education team. We have one of the largest special education programs in the district, and they do a phenomenal job of co-leading that group of people. I also just want to brag on them a little bit. They started their master's degree program through the NAU cohort and are just doing a really great job of gobbling up any and all experiences and opportunities that we've passed their way, and have really started to really grow in their leadership and their contributions to our campus on a more global sense outside of just the department that they lead. So just want to brag on them. Next, my student achievement teacher, Jake Gerdner, for successfully completing his first year as student achievement teacher. He did a great job of coordinating our last round of state assessments. There are so many tiny details that are involved in there, and he rose to every single one of those and really made sure that we had a flawless testing season. I want to recognize Lorena Fonseca and Lorena Sutton. They're Cottonwood teachers for translating classroom materials into Spanish for our upcoming Spanish immersion program. They're taking all the things that you would typically see on a Vail classroom wall and translating them into Spanish and making them look like they look in every other classroom. And it has taken a boatload of work, and they've done a really great job with making things look really great and sharp for our students. And then lastly, I have a super fun recognition for one of our students, Talmadge Layton. He's actually a current 8th grade student at Desert Sky Middle School, and he is an Eagle Scout, prior Cottonwood Coyote. He just completed his Eagle Scout project at Cottonwood. Talmadge was such a joy to work with throughout the entire project. He's such a sweet boy, and he's super articulate. He was able to install a 9-square court, 2 tether balls, and then 2 4-square courts as well. Coupled with his recognition and his contribution to our campus, they put in over 200 volunteer hours as a group installing those items at our school. But they also partnered with community businesses to make sure that the cost of that was really driven down. And so they were slated to spend about $5,000 on the project that PTSA had helped fundraise for to kind of just do playground improvements. And through his partnerships and our partnerships with different local businesses, we were actually only able to spend $500 on the total project. So just want to shout out to Ace, Home Depot, Ormus Concrete, Borderlands, and Lowe's for their partnership with us and helping that young man to do something really impactful on his previous campus. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mrs. Bates. We also have Mr. Jerry Brown here.
Good evening, President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, members of the board. I'd like to recognize about 28 of my staff members in transportation that have spent the majority of the summer and will spend the next couple of weeks finishing up a number of projects for transportation. The summer, as it turns out, is one of the busiest times of the year for us in transportation. Just there's so much to get done before the new school year. Much of what we're doing involves the buses, getting them ready to be able to transport kids with certifications, inspections, emissions, just a number of different things. But we organized a number of work teams to offer opportunities for some of the transportation staff that were interested in doing that. A number of the teams that we have in place are, for example, the paint team. This is a team of workers, of staff that have spent a lot of the summer going around to the different bus bays to paint markers, speed limit markers on the deck, on the asphalt, painting curbs, painting a number of different things, but also hanging speed limit signs in the bus bays. One of the things we have worked on is standardizing the speed limits in the bus bays, making them more safe. There were a number of different signs in there, older signs in some of the bus bays, ranging from 15 miles an hour to 5 miles an hour. It should be 5 miles an hour in through those bus bays. But then the other team is a seat repair team. This is a group of people who are actually removing seats from the buses that have been destroyed or vandalized, and we repair them ourselves. They actually have a nice industrial sewing machine that they operate. The seats themselves are part of the safety features on buses. Many people don't know that, but the foam, all the way down to the foam on the buses themselves, the material, the coverings, but they're busy working on those things, getting our buses ready to go on that end of things. Last year, that seat team saved the district a little more than $6,000 that we would have had to pay if we had outsourced those repairs to an upholstery shop. We also have an administrative team that is busy working on a number of things. Their biggest initiatives in the summer are to get the bus first aid kits all up to speed, replenishing supplies in those first aid kits, making sure the inside of the bus is ready to go, the paperwork, books and things that the drivers will maps and pieces that the drivers will rely on in the coming year. A lot of record keeping, filing and sorts, those kinds of things. The last team is the bus cleaning team. As I was leaving the yard tonight, I was looking over at the buses and they are all shining and looking so nice. The bus wash team, they're out there and they're washing these buses and making them look nice. Not just the outside, but the inside, sanitizing the buses. They really look sharp. They look so nice. I love getting the compliments from the public and from people who notice how nice the Vail buses look. And we're ready in that regard too. I've got a number of names of people that I just wanted to recognize on the team. I'll submit those names to you, Cindy, so you can get them in the minutes. But it's about 29 of my drivers and a handful of monitors, and they're working so hard. I'm so proud of them. I just have to recognize them for their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Have a few other district-wide recognitions. One regarding some of our performing arts, or Cienega High School, Empire High School. They dominated the Monty Awards categories, which is best actor at Cienega High School was Corey Messia. Best music direction was Cienega High School for Something Rotten. Best director for Empire High School, SpongeBob the Musical, and best creative element was Empire High School, SpongeBob the Musical. And Cienega will once again be representing our school district at nationals this summer on Broadway for the Monty Awards. Just really good, consistent work by those involved with our theater programs at our high school levels. The last thing I just want to note as far as district-wide recognitions, I know you all as a board attended numerous graduation and promotion ceremonies. I did too. I somewhere between 10 and 12 different graduation and or promotion ceremonies over the last week and a half of school. And I'm just struck every year, and maybe this year in particular, by many things. One, the quality of programs that were put forth for each of the thought and detail that went into the planning for each of those respective ceremonies, whether it was a kindergarten promotion ceremony or a high school graduation ceremony. They're just well done, thoughtful, and engage our parents and acknowledge and recognize our students. I had the opportunity, all but one of those, I was seated as, sometimes uncomfortably, as a dignitary in those ceremonies. But on the last one I went to was on the Friday. The last day of school was a 5th grade promotion ceremony. A friend of mine invited me, asked if I would sit with he and his family as his son promoted from 5th grade to 6th grade. And I had the chance to do that and see again through the eyes of parents what those ceremonies mean. And I think of all of the things I participated in, perhaps that was the most meaningful because I was really able to be an observer instead of a participant, and watching as our administrative staff at that respective school speak to the kids and the parents knowingly and lovingly and caringly about their year, watching the teacher stand up and say something meaningful, poignant, often funny about each student that went across the stage, watching parents with tears in their eyes, watching students as they have the connections with their best friends, walking across the stage, watching parents in the audience sitting next to their friends who have kids there. I was just struck with that was just one of many, many examples of what it looks like when education is a community effort. And it's no small effort to make that happen. And I just want to acknowledge all of our staff that made each one of those respective ceremonies and promotions happen and meaningful. That's all I have for staff, student, community recognitions.
Thank you. Our next is call to the public and acknowledgement of public requests to speak. I don't have any at this time. Is there anyone wishing to address the board this evening? Okay, we'll move on to correspondence and reports. We'll start with our superintendent's report. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Pratt, members of the board. It's fairly quiet across our sites with the exception of a lot of cleaning and construction is going on and maintenance is happening around the district. So just want to call attention to that. We are in constant construction mode around the district office as we're doing the roof project. So bear with us. If you need to go find somebody, you might have to call Cindy because they may are likely not where they used to be. So just a reminder that the other really big thing that we've been doing, we received at the last minute, we applied for it, but governor's grant for free summer school. We received that grant, $550,000, which allowed us to provide free summer school for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. The K-8 portion of that wrapped up last week. High school is going on right now. We'll have a fuller report on that either at the meeting in June or the first one in July. Mr. Hurley and some of his crew have been overseeing the implementation of that. I just wanted to, there's a lot happening around summer school and programming for our kids. Also a lot happening through community services with our summer camps and so on. So just things that we're offering through our short summer. That's all I have for superintendent's report.
Thank you. Our next item is board reports. Do any board members wish to give a report at this time? Mr. King?
I got one. So, all right. So since our last meeting in May, been a little over a month, that last week of school, I attended 5 graduations and 1 8th grade promotion ceremony at Corona Foothills for the Odyssey of the Mind group who was taken off. I did get to speak at the American Legion Post 109, give their Memorial Day discussion there. I also spoke at University of Arizona for Girls State and discussed the leadership aspect there. Also attended the ASBA Legislative Committee, where districts from around the state came together and discussed priorities for the association to advocate for in the state legislature. It did end up reminding them all that reminded the school districts there, the reason we were there was because kids. So I quoted you there, Ed. So, and that everything that we do there impacts the life of children. So statewide. Then this past weekend, we attended the ASBA Summer Leadership Conference, where we attended numerous breakout sessions. We attended the Black Alliance and the Hispanic and Native American caucus morning meetings. So, and couldn't attend the rural meeting because it was actually at the same time as one of the other ones. So sorry about that. And then tomorrow, June 14th is Flag Day. So I have a little thing here. It says,
that the flag of the United States shall be the 13 stripes of alternate red and white with a union of 13 stars of white in a blue field representing the new constellation. That was a resolution adopted by the Continental Congress on June 14th, 1777. The resolution was made following the report of a special committee which had been assigned to suggest the flag's design. The flag of this design was first carried into battle on September 11th, 1777 at the Battle of the Brandywine. The American flag was first saluted by foreign naval vessels on February 14th, 1778, when the Ranger, bearing the Stars and Stripes and under the command of Captain Paul Jones, arrived in the French port. The flag first flew over a foreign territory in early 1778 at Nassau, Bahama Islands, where Americans captured a British fort. Observance of the adoption of the flag was not soon in coming. However, although there were many claims to its official first observance of Flag Day, all but one took place more than an entire century after the flag's adoption in 1777. Bernard J. Sigrand, a school teacher from Wabaca, Wisconsin, reportedly spent years trying to get Congress to declare June 14th as a national holiday. Although his attempts failed, the day was widely observed. Father of Flag Day honors have been given to William T. Kerr, who was credited with the founding of the American Flag Day Association in 1888, while still a schoolboy in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Both President Wilson in 1916 and President Coolidge in 1927 issued proclamations asking for June 14th to be observed as the National Flag Day. But it wasn't until August 3rd, 1949 that Congress approved the national observance and President Harry Truman signed it into law. So there's a little history lesson. And then the last thing I'd like to say is, and this was my backup, I'd like to wish a belated Mother's Day to all the mothers out there and a happy Father's Day to all the Father's Day, all the fathers coming up this Sunday.
Thank you. Other board reports? Ms. Anderson?
Yeah, just real quick, with it being my first year, well, it hasn't even been a year, but the first year I'm on the board, the graduation ceremonies were amazing, and it was just such an honor to be there and to be there with the kids. I as well got to attend 5 of the high school graduations, one of the 8th grade and then also one of the 5th grade. And so it was just such an honor and to be there with the kids. And then I also, one of my favorite things I got to do in the last month was to watch the Monty Awards for Empire and Cienega, and just to see Corey win, Corey Messina. And I'm just thrilled for him that he's going to the Jimmy Awards in New York in about a week. And so just awesome. This is the second year in a row that Cienega has Best Actor in Southern Arizona. And so just kudos to Richard Grimmel and Aubrey Wilkes. And Jessica Armistead and Jeremy Vega, and just grateful for the work they are doing and to see these awards for our community and for our kids. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other board reports? Mr. Buster?
Yes, ma'am. I had the great opportunity for my first year of being part of this wonderful institution, thanks to our community, to confer and be a part of the graduation cycle. And for me, it was very heartfelt. The intentionality of our district and each one of our administrators, our principals, and of course, our phenomenal educators. The future looks bright because of you. I am just overwhelmed with the number of individuals that work on and off the clock. Dedicated teachers working with each one of our students, every one of our students, showing so much compassion, passion for education, commitment to educating students is just really overwhelming. And thanks to each one of you, the future looks very bright. So huge thanks to each one of you for what you do each and every day. And thank you on behalf of myself, because you've made it a phenomenal opportunity to be a part of this excellent board, this wonderful school district, and a small part of the education process. So outstanding, outstanding, and outstanding. Beyond that, I did this past weekend have the opportunity to go with John as well as Chris to the ASB summer conference
and lots and lots and lots more to learn. But as a lifelong learner, I'm definitely engaged and on board, and I want to bring some more phenomenal things to our school district with your help. So this is great professional development for me as well as other folks on the board, and I'm looking forward to bringing more to the district.
Thank you, Mr. Bester. Any other board reports? Ms. Tippett?
Thank you. This was a really personal graduation season for me, as I had my middle graduate from Cienega and my little promote from 8th grade on into high school, all in the space of a week, and all of the celebrations that ensued with that. But graduation season has been one of my favorite highlights as a board member. The opportunity to celebrate with families and see the joy in kiddos' faces as they cross the stage, and sometimes those really emotional moments where you can tell it was just such a struggle. And they were so relieved that they made it, and so grateful for the relationships that they had while they were there. Those moments were the sweetest. And I'm so grateful for our staff that work so hard to intentionally connect with students, especially when they're struggling, to help them cross that stage and reach their goals, and set them up for just that higher, that one more notch that will give them an advantage in this world as they grow up and to be an adult. So congratulations to the parents for graduating your kiddos, and congratulations to the kiddos for moving on into whatever your next step in the future is. And congratulations to our staff for another wonderful year. Thank you.
Thank you. I know a lot's been said about graduation, so I won't add too much, but one thing that I noticed this year, and I just love seeing, is the ways that the kids cheer for each other at graduation. And it happened at every graduation, but it was very evident at Empire, just because the graduates are right in front of us and we could see it. And I just loved seeing the way that they would cheer for each other. And after the speakers, they were so respectful and kind, generous to the speakers. And then just seeing the connections with the teachers and the students as they were graduating. I just loved seeing that. I also just love seeing at graduation time the distinct ways that each schools celebrate their students. So it's a busy week, graduation week, but it's a bucket filler for sure. I love it. So kudos to all who are involved in that. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items listed below are consent matters and will be considered by one motion at this time. There'll be no discussion of consent items. Any board member may remove an item from the consent agenda by request. All items not accepted and approved as part of the consent agenda will be considered individually. Do any board members wish to pull an item? Mr. King?
W.
Okay. Mr. Cruz?
Thank you, President Pratt, members of the board. It's recommended that Vail School District Governing Board approve all items on the consent agenda as presented, with the exception of item W.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve as presented.
Mr. Bester?
I'll second.
And Ms. Tippett, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, not seeing any, the motion carries. Now we will consider item W. Mr. Cruz?
Thank you, President Pratt, members of the board. This item is to take hiring action on a slate of classified personnel. There is an attached list of those that are being hired for their respective positions. And with that, I'll make the motion that the Vail School District Governing Board approve employment of the following support staff relative to the attached list as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? So,
I have to recuse myself from this one.
okay.
Motion to approve as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Bester. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Tippett, comments and questions? Mr. King?
I have family member who is on this one. It's the brother of my son-in-law, so I'm going to recuse myself from this vote.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, if not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to old business. Item A, it's change in school designation and increased school choice for La Estancia neighborhood and the associated neighborhoods. This is an action item. Mr. Cruz?
Thank you, President Pratt and members of the board. This is an item we studied probably about 2 months ago. We hit pause on bringing it back as action so that we had time to provide notice to all of the families who are in the respected impacted area. Just as a I'll kind of reminder of what we're trying to do. We're looking at changing a school designation. One is part of this item, but two, really also providing additional transportation opportunities to allow for enhanced student choice, school choice by families who live in that area because of the kind of the compact nature of this respective neighborhood. So the neighborhoods that we're talking about are on the western boundary of our school district between Cole Road and Wilmot Road, bisected by I-10. So it's the neighborhood immediately north of that, which is the La Estancia neighborhood. That would be the area. One area that we talked about, the other neighborhood is the area south of I-10 and north of Herman Road. So right now, and so I just want to call attention to those two respective neighborhoods as I come back and give a little bit more background. Right now, the La Estancia neighborhood, the neighborhood north of I-10, their school designation or their school boundary is Mesquite Elementary School. Those students go there. There's for the roads that you see in that respective picture, there's roughly 1,000 homes that are built. This is an older picture. The unbladed land just south of that, another 1,000 homes are going in. We need to, Mesquite is full, and so we need to do something. We can't send the next 1,000 students, all of those next 1,000 students there without having some relief. But simply changing a boundary and requiring that is not, we don't think we needed to do that. So we sat down with Mr. Brown, Mr. Wood, myself, Mr. Hurley, and Mr. Carney, kind of contemplate what we could do here. And really what the plan is to change the designation, the school that designated for that area north of I-10, so with La Estancia, that school would change from Mesquite to Desert Willow. However, any student who is currently in that area that's attending Mesquite can continue to attend to Mesquite. Further, anybody that's in that area, either the older area or the newer neighborhoods, we can transport to either Desert Willow, Mesquite, Cottonwood, or Vale Academy. They can choose to go to any one of those schools as long as there's space available. Their designated school would be Desert Willow, but they can attend any one of those other schools if there's space available, and we'll provide transportation. So we provide open enrollment across the district without transportation in most instances, but because of the compact nature and the fact that we're running buses in there now and the compact nature with which those schools reside in the Rita Ranch area, we're able to make that happen. Further, the area south of I-10 and those neighborhoods already is their designated school or their boundaried school is Desert Willow. However, we don't provide transportation to those other three respective schools. So we can do that as well. So that neighborhood now will also be able to have transportation to not only Desert Willow, but Mesquite, Cottonwood, and Vale Academy as our ability to do that. So we've sent notices out to everybody that's affected. Mr. Carney is returning from vacation today, so I haven't spoken to him in the last couple of days prior to his leaving. We hadn't received any negative feedback at all from anybody that received a letter of this notice. Fundamentally, I think because if you were currently going to school and you want to stay at that school, you can continue to go to that school and have transportation as long as you want. If you're a new family that's moving in, you'll have a choice. Most likely that choice won't be Mesquite because that school is full. So those schools are choices if space is available. Mesquite is the only one of those that's full. There's some grade levels at Vail Academy that are full. Some grade levels, even at Cottonwood that are maybe a little full. But anyways, we can move them around. We've expanded the services of our enrollment person who are now designated as enrollment concierge, Amy Castle. So they can simply contact Amy and find their respective school. So that's the background. Just as I know it's been a bit since we talked about that. Just wanted to go through that again with you before I make a recommendation. So I'll make the recommendation and then happy to answer any additional questions. It's recommended that the Vail School District Governing Board approve the change in school designation and increased school choice and transportation options for the La Estancia neighborhood and increased school choice and transportation options for Desert Stone, Sycamore Point, and Vistamonte Estates residents as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve as presented.
Mr. Buster,
Second.
Mr. King, comments or questions? No. Ms. Tibbet.
I remember not so long ago making a change for La Estancia from Cottonwood to Mesquite. And so I think this kind of forward thinking idea, because it's so close together, will allow us to accommodate that large neighborhood in the most creative and parental choice option possible. So I like more opportunity, more choices. It's a unique spot where we can do this. There's nowhere else in the district that we can duplicate that. So grateful for the opportunity. Thanks, Mr. Brown, for working through that.
Absolutely. Any other comments or questions? No. So normally I think that, realigning boundaries causes a lot of heartburn among parents. This might be the easiest one that we've had on our tenure for the board. I also think about the sign. I think you have a sign in your office that says something like "Start with yes." And I think in this case, you didn't have to lead with this to say, okay, we can do this. It would be easy to just say, okay, we're gonna make a hard line that, they have to go to these schools. But to look at this and say, okay, can we do this? Can we say yes? Can we be so flexible to parents? And then the answer is yes, we can. I, of course, wish we could do this with all the neighborhoods, but I'm just really grateful that we can do it with this and that the leadership here makes that happen. So thank you. And thank you to Mr. Brown. If there are no other comments or questions, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any. The motion carries. Thank you. The second item under old business is personalized college admissions project. This is an action item. Mr. Kruth.
Thank you, President Pratt and members of the board. We had a presentation on this at our last board meeting regarding our ability to do a data sharing agreement that will help enhance ability for our students to have a personalized admissions project. Fundamentally, it's sharing information to target students who may not have been thinking that they were eligible or their scores enabled them to go to college, but in fact do, that they would get an admissions letter from their respective in-state college to do that. So happy to answer any additional questions related to that. Ms. Amanda Cook presented that information with the last meeting, just as a point of reference. So with that, I'll go ahead and make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve the participation with the personalized college admissions project as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Seconded.
Mr. King and Mr. Buster. Any comments or questions? I know we studied this last time.
I missed that meeting.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
So if you could give me
The nickel tour.
Yeah.
Certainly. So this is actually, the improvement is an IGA between the ASU Helios Decision Center, ADE, and other entities that are outlined in there, the Mary Lou Fulton Teachers College, and others, that takes a look at when high school students already take the ACT exam, they receive a score for that exam, one, and two, with this, just taking a look at your course of study, because that data sharing agreement with Helios and the Decision Center already allows us, well, does multiple things, but one thing we're able to do now that we weren't able to do is take a look at what a former Vail student, how they're performing in college, and look at what their course of study was, and how to backwards align. So in other words, we know if you're a college student who attended a school in Vail and you're in an Arizona college and you're taking chemistry, we can look at each respective student and say, what courses did they take at Cienega High School and what is their grades? And so that's the backwards facing version of this data sharing agreement. There's a forward facing version of this that also looks at what are the courses that a student is taking? Are those courses and their grades on track to move forward to college? That, coupled with their scores on their on state testing, one of which is the ACT, that if students are on track for going to college, they will get an acceptance. They will get a letter sent to them says you have been provisionally accepted to these respective universities in state. So it removes well, right now it has to take active participation for a student and their family to say, hey, I'm going to college and I'm taking action to do that, right? This data sharing agreement and IGA allows universities to take a look at the course of study that a high school student is taking and fundamentally say, if you're on track based on these factors, you are provisionally accepted into our university. So it's a passive knock on your door saying, hey, you're accepted. You keep doing these things, you'll be accepted. So it's just an enhanced way for us to help deliver information about the next step in a young person's life beyond what is here. And in particular, we think the impact is going to be around first generation college students and others who may not have thought that it's possible. Fundamentally, the exact the motion has to do with approving the IGA that allow that to happen.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense.
Mr. Kruth, I know last time one of the things that we had talked about was the privacy aspect of it, and also, I know that parents will have a little heartburn if they hear, okay, we're sharing information, their kids' information. I know that Ms. Cook had a good answer for that. I just don't remember exactly what it was.
and I'm gonna, if I wander off too far, Mr. Hurley or Mrs. May, nudge me back into the center. But fundamentally, all students already have a SACE ID number. So it's a unique student identification number. That's the data we already share with ADE. That's how they're tracked. They're not tracked by their name at the state level. They're tracked by their SACE ID number. And that respective information is what is shared. So that's that connection point. Then I don't know exactly what that SACE ID, because it's not the SACE ID number that goes over into their college. But there's a way to make the link between who they are as a college student and that SACE ID number and that their unique ID identification number. But there's no other data that's shared other than that.
Okay.
Did I miss anything? Okay.
And so is there an opt-in? I'm sorry.
I should say fundamentally it's data that's already collected on a student and already sitting in an archive at the Arizona Department of Ed. This is simply sharing that through an ID number, with the Arizona, believe it all goes through the Helios Arizona ASU Decision Center. That's the hub of where AZ Connects is. I know that's a lot of words, but that's AZ Connects is the linear throughput for students in K-12 through through college.
Okay. And is it an opt-in for parents?
No.
No, all students get it. Okay, sounds great. Mr. Bester, do you have a question?
Yes, and again, just acknowledgement that this is consistent with FERPA.
Yes.
Excellent.
Clarification, it's not an opt-in for their data to be shared by signing this agreement. It's absolutely an opt-in for them to do what they want with a letter when they receive it.
Okay, so
I just want to clarify, you weren't asking, they will receive a letter if this goes through, they will receive a letter. What they do with that letter, they will opt in, but they can't, I suppose somebody could ask and we could remove them, but it's an automatic automatic data sharing piece, because we're not the ones that it's actually giving them the data. It's actually ADE sharing their data with the decision center.
My question was more of, does a permission slip go out and then parents say yes or no? That's kind of what I was asking. It seemed like a lot of work. So,
not unlike data, frankly, that we share with military and recruiters.
okay.
I mean, especially at that level.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions? No. Okay. This is an action item. So if there's no other comments or questions, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Thank you. We will move on now to new business. Our first item is the Vail Early College update. This is an inform item, Mr. Cruz.
Yeah, it's just a wonderful time of year to have Mrs. May come and speak to us about the successes of this past year in Vail Early College, and look forward to next year. Mrs. May.
Thank you. Get myself set up here.
You had it there.
Oh, I did. I will, yeah, sorry. Use it, there we go. This is figure out how the work is. I think I know how to work these things. All right, there we go. I'm used to my mouse. There we go. I'm sorry about that, guys. Apologize. This over here. I have my notes. My brain's on summer vacation.
Those are still huge.
Right? There's my son. He's not that young anymore. I'm used to using a mouse. Can you tell? There we go. There we go. All right. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. President Pratt, members of the board, Mr. Cruz, thank you so much for letting me join you this evening to just have a little update on the successes of the Vail Early College and kind of where we've been at and where we're going. I am proud to say that we're now 5 years strong. It is amazing to think that 5 years ago today, I was thinking about what I was getting myself into after leaving Empire for 12 years and being an achievement teacher and starting a whole new adventure, which had no rule book and no previous, no other early colleges to follow here in the state of Arizona. And I'm really proud to say that we are 5 years strong. So far in these 5 years, we have had 265 Vail students walk through our doors of our program with a wide variety of our schools served. And that's a lot of Vail parents. It's a lot of students. And it has been 5 amazing years to really get to know some great individuals. We've had a great distribution of representation of our schools over the years. Obviously, Micah Mountain is still low on that distribution because they weren't open for the and couldn't feed students in for the first 3 years of our program. But the reason I really want to focus on 5 years strong is because of the data that we now have. As you know, coming from the SAT world, and data is something I'd love to look at. It's how we reflect and know what we're doing is going in the right direction. And so we have that 5 years of data to really look at how our students are doing. And one of the points that we look at for that is called a completion rate, and specifically successful completion. There's two completion rates. One is just completion of a student from the start of class of day one of that term to the end of that term. Do they stay in that class? But successful completion is, do they earn a C, a B, or an A? Do they actually earn that grade that is transferable? The orange in this graph is our early college students from fall of 2018 to the spring of 2023. We have that data. And then the blue is Pima as a campus wide, because remember, our students are in those classes at Pima. And so kind of looking a little apples to apples as best as I can to see how our students in their completion rate stacking up against your typical Pima student, and our students are doing well. I'm proud to say that we have a success rate on average of all of those years. We've had some ups and downs. You see the COVID, but still, we did well that year. We still managed to maintain on average over our 5 years a successful completion rate of 93%. That's great. I know it's not 100%, but I have to admit it's college. These are harder classes. They're more rigorous. Not everyone can make it through college without a D or possibly a W or an F. But our students are performing really, really well. They're getting the job done. And that helps us to reflect on, are the structures that we're doing, is it beneficial to the students? And that's one of the big things with that 20% difference between Pima and our early college students. I really attribute that to the structure of the program, the intentional structure that we have, where we bring students in, we provide an intensive boot camp, and on top of all of the college success class we have, there's 2 Vail staff members who it's our job to be with them in the trenches day to day, to help them when they need a shoulder to cry on or a cheerleader to celebrate them. Your typical college student doesn't have that on a day-to-day basis. And that's one of the real benefits of this program, is the fact that we have Patty Manciata and myself there with the students on a daily basis, helping them when they need it, or just supporting them and being there for them, when they're going through their day-to-day. And you can see that intentional case management, as I call it, is really beneficial. And it's something you're starting to see at colleges happening more and more. But they're dealing with a whole lot more students. Pima does, it's 20,000 students there versus our, 50 to 70. We're blessed that we can spend that time really working with the students to help them understand what they need and the tools they need for success. A lot of people think, well, of course you have that great completion rate. You have the best and the brightest. Well, of course I have Vail students, yes. But I also have students who want to work, and it's not that they're the top of the class. They're the students that are there because they want to get that experience and to learn what it takes to be successful. And they've done a really, really great job. We just wrapped up with cohort 5. It's kind of crazy to say that when I think back of it all. We had 50 students in this cohort, so we're on our upward trajectory. We had a little dip last year, but we're increasingly going up. And all of our schools were represented, our brick and mortar schools, and they all came to us to become early college monarchs. And for those of you new to the board, we are the monarchs. We have that identity because if you think about the monarch butterfly, it has to travel great distances to become what it's going to be, just like our students leaving their high school campus, going far, sometimes very far. We've had students drive all the way from Benson. We have someone coming from Red Rock next year. We have people coming from great distances to come to the early college, but also they go through a metamorphosis. They go through a change. And that's why the Monarch really speaks to our students, because they start as high school students, but really go through that process of transforming and becoming just amazing young adults ready to spread their wings and fly on their own. And that's really what it's all about. It's Patty and I, our job is not to just take care of all their problems. It's to help them figure them out so that when they go on to their 4-year university or wherever it is they go after us, they're ready to handle those challenges. They know we're always a phone call away. I'm still getting phone calls from first cohort students, but they have the tools in their toolkit to go on and to be successful. And this year's group was really, really, really successful. Looking at the numbers of our cohort, the average college credits earned by graduation for these students was 31. That's a really impressive achievement. The total cohort credits earned was 1,541 college credits. And those are all PIMA credits. That's not accounting for maybe those that took, U of A has some dual enrollment things, and maybe if they didn't put their AP credits on their PIMA transcript, those sorts of things, but still a lot of credits earned by our students in the early college. Of those 50 students, this is a stat that I'm actually proud of. 74% earned a GPA of 3.0 or better for college, and our average was actually 3.34. And I know some people might not think that's super great, but when you look at national averages, what I could find currently is about 3.15. So our students are sitting above the national average for their first year of college. They were taking 4 college classes per semester, 8 total. So they were really full-time college students. And of that, 20%, 10 of our 50 earned a 4.0. They just rocked it, knocked it out of the park. And not all of those students had 4.0s coming into the program. A couple of those students were students that had maybe had a bumpy freshman year, but they came in and they figured it out, and college transformed them, and they had a purpose, and they did amazing things with that. And the other stat that I'm proud of is our persistence statistic. Persistence is that continuation from one semester to the next, from year to year. And prior to the pandemic, we had 100% persistence from fall to spring. We didn't have any students go back. The pandemic changed that a little bit because virtual college and just lots of various things. But this year we had 100%. We were back to that. I really see us as being back to that pre-pandemic feel. This year just felt like that, especially on East Campus, the students, the way things were going. And so we saw that 100% persistence. All the students, we had them all continue from fall into spring. And then on top of it, we have, as right now, our planned persistence. This is where on May 1st, College Decision Day, 100% had committed to a university or another community college. And so that in and of itself meant they wanted to keep going. Sometimes we've had students who step back to go into military, which is great. Appreciate that service. But we also have students that decide to take a gap. That gap year, which we all hope doesn't turn into the gap decade because of for whatever reason. I don't have that as of this point with this year. Come August, when I do my reach outs to students, we'll find out. But I'm pretty confident that this group is ready to go on to their planned university. And where they're going, well, the majority of our early college students go to the U of A. It's a really easy transition. The courses transfer really well. A lot of students still can live at home. It's cheaper. So about 30 of our 50 are committed to the U of A. We do have 7 going to NAU. We have 6 remaining at Pima. We have 2 that are going to BYU. We have 1 student that's going to Eastern Arizona College. They have a specific program that they want to finish out for their associate. They're transferring there. And then we have a West Virginia University, a student going there, a student going to Howard, and a student going to Harvard. And so those we're all pretty excited about. I can tell you that was the Harvard application was the most complicated one I've ever done, but it was a fun one to work with that student on. And we were I've never screamed more loud. Somebody, I don't know, when she came in and told me that it was an exciting moment. And I think they heard me probably all the way to Irvington, I'm sure, but it was exciting. So I'm happy in August, I'll be doing follow-ups with these students to see if that's where they ended up. And I'm hoping to report that they all are there. And then I continue to follow up with my students. I make sure that they know we're still looking out for them and wanting to hear how things are going. It helps us with the transition to know how college credits transfer, so we can make transition and we can adjust our structure and our intentionality of things as to best suit our students. Looking ahead, what's next? Well, as I said, we have an upward trajectory. We're back to pre-pandemic. Our cohort 6 will be excited. We have 70 students coming in. We've already had our 3 spring workshops with them and welcomed them in, registered them for classes. We had a really great interest in the program again. We filled Micah Mountain's auditorium, which was amazing. I'm always worried that nobody's going to show up for a parent night or an information night, and there were people standing, so that was wonderful. We had lots of applications, spent most of February interviewing students, but we have 70 from all 5 of the schools coming to us next year, and Micah Mountain has 16. I was really happy that college going culture has really translated, and we have 16 students joining us from Micah Mountain next year. Empire has always been one of the main schools that we get. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I used to teach there, but I'm not sure. And then just to give you a little bit of insight as to one of our goals, we set goals for ourselves. I know we follow the 301 goals for the high schools, but we also set personal goals just separate from ours. And ours is really looking at that successful completion rate. I know 93 sounds good, but it's not good enough for me. Never settle. And so we're working towards hopefully achieving a 95%. We know that we're not perfection in college. 100% is not, I would be crazy to say I want 100%. If I ever got that, I think I might just pass out. But it's just those pieces where it's you want to make sure you have those attainable goals. So we're shooting for 95% completion for fall and spring, and working on what we can do to help best serve our students, Patty, Menciette, and I, to really ensure that they're meeting those completion rates. And then one of the things that I'm also a little proud of is in Vail, we're a Lighthouse District. Well, I've had the opportunity to kind of continue that by working with other colleges and high schools around the state to start their early college programs. We're the only one here in this part of Arizona and Tucson yet. But this year, Prescott High School started their early college. I think they had 11 students, and I've been working with their coordinator. They're housed out of Yavapai College. And so I'm super happy that they got that up and running this year and had a great year. And then Cochise College and Eastern Arizona College have also been talking with me and Ethan and Norm Purdy about what do we do behind the scenes? What's the magic for making it all work? Because they want to provide these opportunities for their students as well. So that's been a fun thing. So I'm just hoping that we can continue with what we're doing here in Vail to show the opportunities that there are for the early college, especially the system we have, where it's not just providing free college for students and paying for classes and telling them good luck, but it's being there to support them and providing staff to be there to support and to provide that case management. That's what I think really helps to create that success. So I want to thank you for your time and ultimately for your support, because I really cannot have this job if you don't let me have it. And every day I pinch myself that I really do feel like I have the best job in the Vail School District. And going into my 22nd year, I've done a lot of jobs and I couldn't think of doing anything else. So I'm looking forward to what next year and the next 5 and the next 5. I don't retire for at least 10. So my goal is to keep it going. So my son, who's now 10, can hopefully experience early college. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. May. This is an important item.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Ms. Anderson.
Well, I was just going to say, I just want to say thank you. I don't really have a question, but I have been able to talk to other parents in the district, because I still think not everyone knows about it. And I've talked to parents whose kids aren't sure what they're doing with their senior year and they want to be done. And I've been able to talk to a couple parents who their kids are now going to do this. And one of them is doing it this coming year. And just to see that that's what they're ready for. And I just love the options. And so I just love that there's options. And so thank you. Thank you for doing this for kids. I just so appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me do it.
Other comments or questions, Ms. Tippett?
As you were presenting, I was thinking about how does their grades earned in college affect their high school GPA and their place in the race for valedictorian or salutatorian?
Really great question. Yes, Mr. Cruz.
Mrs. May.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
It doesn't, unless you're at Micah Mountain High School. If you come into the Vail Early College, the only high school that allows you to be valedictorian or salutatorian is Micah Mountain High School. All other high schools, if you choose to come to the early college, you forego that ability, of which we've had 3 students choose to forego that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm not going to get on my soapbox. But it does impact, all the grades go back on their high school transcript and act the same as an AP class. And in most cases, the students are earning the same amount as a student that's at the high school taking AP classes in dual enrollment. So there really isn't an advantage for a student coming into the early college based on just the amount of rigorous coursework already available at the high schools that students can take.
Mr. Cruz.
Yeah,
Sorry,
also add for some context, while valedictorian, salutatorian are prestigious at the high school level for the students who are in their mental race to do those things, from the next step perspective of what happens for college admissions, it's really it's an absolute moot point. They look at the course of study, they look at the application process, they look at test scores, they look at community-based things, and frankly, what we're seeing is students who are choosing Vail Early College are set up some of the highest and most attractive to universities because they're choosing some of the most rigorous coursework. So those students are also largely foregoing many things of, their senior year experience by going and participating here. So while we can debate the merits of whether they should or they shouldn't be in the running for valedictorian, salutatorian at those respective schools, as a practical matter, students who are making that choice have made a choice to change, to make their senior year look different and enter that world. And as a practical matter, the body work they're doing while they're there, especially if they're successful in a way, even just at the median level of what Mrs. May is talking about, sets them up incredibly well. I would argue better than probably anything else that we do for success in college.
So I know you said you were not going to get on your soapbox, but I would just like to express my opinion about this. I just really quick. I agree with everything you're saying, Mr. Cruz. I think having had a child do it and having another child coming in this next year, what I struggle with a little bit. I think they're choosing this program because of the merits of the program. I think it's unfair for students who have served 3 years of their 4-year high school experience at the school sites not to at least be named, even if they're not the salutatorian or the valedictorian. I think it's not fair to at least acknowledge them as that. Just wanted to share my opinion. So, Mr. King.
Superintendent Caruth and I actually got to attend the award ceremony, and some of the comments that we got to hear from the family is, and one that I took away from it is, and I don't know if you remember the comment, a lady came up to you and said, "This program saved my daughter's life." So that one right there just kind of stuck with me. That and watching one of the other young people up there earn 64 credits. Honestly, that right there says basically this program is worth more than its weight in gold to these kids and their future and to their subsequent generations. So I just want to thank you for everything that you've actually put into this.
Thank you, Mr. King. Ms. Anderson,
I actually have a question, and it's because of what Callie asked, and it's not valedictorian, salutatorian. It had to do with GPA. I thought dual enrollment, whether it's at the school or VEC, was half, and AP is. So is it the same, Mr. Cruz?
Mrs. May and or Mr. Hurley, which one would like to field that as far as consistency across the schools?
Yeah, it is the same. Thank you. So it doesn't, you can take either or and it's the same.
Correct.
Thank you.
The only exceptions or to add to that is for the more CTE dual enrollment courses, what are not, then like the non-transferable. If I'm correct, those are just straight credits.
So if they're taking dual enrollment at the school though, it's
The same.
It's the same. Okay.
And that's how the young man who had 64, he had started at Cienega with the dual enrollment because they have been working on the robust dual enrollment offerings. And then he also had some AP as well. And he transferred it all onto his PIMA transcript and made it all very nice.
Thank you.
Very good. Other comments or questions? When you were talking to these other schools to have them tell you their, your magic formula, I think the magic formula is you and Miss Patty. You guys are doing a really amazing job.
Thank you.
I also think this early college is just as much for the parents as it is for the kids. You know, for me, I know I learned this is when you start to step back. You know what I mean? These kids are doing these meetings with just you. All of a sudden now the parents aren't as involved. You know what I mean? And so just learning how to navigate that. I know Kevin would be annoyed with me if he heard me say Miss Patty because he was like, "We're not in kindergarten, Mom."
Miss Patty would be.
Yes, she
Yes.
would. He's like, "It's Patty, it's not Miss Patty." So, but anyways, just helping these kids just be adults and to stand on their own 2 feet and to help the adults in their life say, "Okay, these kids are adults," and treat them as adults and let them stand on their own 2 feet. So I just cannot even say enough about your program. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on to our next item. The District Fine Arts Coordinator job description. This is an action item, Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Anderson, members of the board. I'm going to kind of tag team this with Mr. Hurley as he's helped pull together much of the background for this as well and looked across other districts for what others are, especially similar size, are doing. Fundamentally, we've had conversations as part of the budget development process about committing additional resources and financial support for our fine arts programs in our school district. At the end of the day, as we do that and being reflective on where we are as a district and what's happening currently in our respective schools, felt that the prudent first step for us would be to create one and identify a district fine arts coordinator. Because if we simply add additional resources to what we are currently doing, the likelihood that we would leverage that investment to its greatest potential would be not as likely as if we took a more thoughtful and coordinated approach across schools. So this is in essence the creation of the position. Fundamentally, the board will be taking action on a new job description, but a position that will help us organize, coordinate, and be the point person for developing structure around improving resources and then outcomes for our students in fine arts programs across the school district. Mr. Hurley, is there anything else you'd like to?
President Cruz, members of the board, the only other thing I was going to add is that I'm just so excited. If you look at statistics, there's about a 20-year trend of districts across the country defunding fine arts over the last 20 years. And so it's really exciting to think that not only are we not defunding, but we're adding to and making a commitment that we're not just going to put a leadership position in, but a person that's going to help support the people that we have. We have people at our schools, and you know this, that are doing amazing things, that are pouring into kids and making differences in their lives, and making a commitment to saying we're going to support you and we're going to help you make more of that is just really exciting.
Picking that up just a little bit. One advantage or disadvantage of being around for a long time is you got to see the trends of things. And when we were an elementary school district, K-8 school district, we went to the community and asked for an override. And the primary purpose of that override when we were in elementary school district was to provide art, music, and PE teachers at each respective school. And we were small at that point. The first override occurred when there was literally 2 schools. It was reauthorized when there was 3. So we have grown, and we now have 22 schools that we support, and we're a unified school district that as of the early 2000s. In 2001, when we opened Cienega High School, it wasn't the intent not to continue to do something with fine arts. It literally, frankly, a 20-year series of situations that prevented us from being able to take that next step and being able to do something more commensurate with fine arts. For one, getting up to speed with building high schools. And then we hit the recession. Then we started to come out of the recession, and then needed to catch up with salaries and other things. And then we hit the pandemic. So in a weird set of circumstances, here we are 20 years later. We have the financial stability, and due to growth and due to some investment at the state level, to be able to go back to something I think the intent was there back in 2001 to be able to do, which is how do we provide and add some additional resources and some structure to what we do to provide for fine arts. We acknowledge the fine arts program during our recognitions tonight. We have incredible staff who are doing that work now. As I note in the background, our staff that are doing that work now, we're just incredibly lucky to have and grateful for the service that they are doing. This is simply how do we help leverage their expertise, coordinate it across sites, share what's working, and if we need to resource some additional things to expand those things that will have the greatest impact for our students. And so I think it's an exciting time for us to be able to move forward. So with that, I'll go ahead and make the recommendations. The Vail School District Governing Board approve the District Fine Arts Coordinator job description as a level 24 as presented.
Thank you. I'll accept a motion.
I'll motion.
Ms. Anderson,
Seconded.
Mr. Bester, comments or questions? Mr. Pitts?
Yes.
Very good. Ms. Anderson?
I just want to say something. Thank you. This is about kids, and I look and I see, and it's about the staff too, because they need the support. But I've told some of you probably many times, you've heard me say this, but these programs save kids. They give them a place at their schools, but during COVID in my home, it was clay and art and drawing and music that kept some of my kids going at a time that other things couldn't. And my kids represent so many kids. And I am just grateful that that our district is putting a focus here because we have amazing teachers, and we have kids who need it. And it's not just, it's about having a place, but these are professions too. It's not just about the here and now. This is about where some of these kids will lead out, and this will be their profession and their livelihood. And I am just grateful that is being supported. So thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Well, I am thrilled to be able to vote on this tonight. So if there's no other comments or questions, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Thank you. Oh, you're staying. Okay. I was like, I don't know.
Mr. Hurley's not going.
Got it. All right. So our next is RFP 24-001-28, textbook adoption is also an action item. Mr. Kruth.
Mr. Hurley. President Pratt, members of the board, Mr. Kruth. One of the things I love about working here is we just had a fantastic presentation about all the amazing dual enrollment things that are happening. And we can also be having a fantastic presentation about all the great AP things that are happening here, right? We don't have to pick either or. This is a both and. So it's really great. So about 3 years ago, we brought to the board 10 textbooks for advanced placement for approval. And that got some momentum, and teachers and schools and principals saw, wow, that's really helping our kids and it's helping make things happen. And so we're tonight going to bring you 4 more. We have European history, physics, statistics, and world history. We'd originally done physics C, but that's really, it's only taught at Cienega and it's one teacher. And they really, after contemplating, said, we're doing okay. And there's no reason to spend money on a book if I don't think I need a book. And it's just literally about 10 kids right now. So we didn't do that. But this is a very, very formal process. This is not like making a purchase. That's why it comes to you guys. So we have a meeting where we bring the teachers in and explain to them the process, and they sign agreements that they don't talk to people and reach out to people, because buying textbooks is a very serious thing. We do the request for proposal, and then any textbook company in the world that sends us a book, we evaluate it just like all the other ones. So we don't know if we're getting 2 books or 10 books. And then those teachers, and they're in your background, and please look at those names. Those are great people. They spent a lot of time. They spent several months going through every single book and their ancillary materials. They did grade all of them on what was the content. Did it address the AP standards? What were the ancillary materials, the test questions and the workbooks and all the things that came with it? And then at the end, we put in the costs. So we had them look at it without the cost, because we were trying to find out what is the best product for kids, not was the cheapest meal. And at the same time, those books were on public display for 60 days. So any member of the community could come in and look at the book and give comments. And that's just part of our governing board standard practice, that's one of the things we have to do. So after all of that, we brought the people together and they scored and voted and averaged it. And we have the recommendation to bring you tonight of these books for these content areas.
It's a long recommendation.
It's a long
Why don't you go ahead?
I got it. Okay. I saw you took the short one, but that's okay. You're going to be here longer than me. The recommendation is that the Vail School District Governing Board awards the contract of advanced placement textbooks, RFP 24-001-28, as well as any required ancillary materials, as a multiple award to Bedford Freeman and Worth Publishing Group for the course of AP European History, Cengage Learning Incorporated for the course of AP Physics 1, McGraw-Hill LLC for the course of AP World History, and Savas Learning Company for the course of AP Statistics. It's also recommended that the portion of the solicitation to adopt an advanced placement textbook for the course AP Physics C be canceled and considered for a future date.
Thank you. We won't have you repeat that.
As presented.
Yes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Bester.
Second.
And Mr. King, comments or questions? Mr. Bester?
I'm very interested in what kind of negative comments, either public or within the meeting context, that were presented about textbooks.
Thank you, Mr. Creel.
Mr. Hurley.
Yep. President Pratt, members of the board, Mr. Ruth, there were not public comments did not come. No one came and looked at those books. We had them on display and sat in the hallway for the 60 days. That's been my experience, I think, for years. Mrs. Penn and I, every year we used to do the 3rd grade reading and then the 4th grade reading, and they would sit, and we've done it forever. And I can count on one hand ever maybe people that came and looked at them. But I can tell you the teachers read through every page, and they really went through, and they were trying to find out, because the game with AP is it's great to get an A on the class, but people really want to pass the test.
Mhm.
So they really wanted to say, if a student had this book, would it help them be more prepared? And so they looked at, did that, the blueprint of this much time on World War I versus World War II, this much, they looked at graphs and charts and things. They looked at what questions it asked. They really tore through them. And it was really an interesting debate. There was, like I said, those people spend lots and lots of times on these things. So it was really good to see the time and effort they put into it. They were very excited to be getting them. So they put the work in, but it was lots of work on the teachers' parts. They really went through them.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Oops.
Yeah,
You're
there's
good.
no public interest in coming and looking at AP statistics book. They're still down there, Mr. If you'd like to go and evaluate them, they're there, but
Thank you for the input.
Other comments or questions? I just have a really quick question. Was this part of the incentive packet to be a part of these committees, or this was a volunteer time for the
Volunteer.
teachers?
It was all volunteer.
Wow. Okay. Very impressive. Yes, thank you. If there's no other comments or questions, I'll call for the vote. This is an action item. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any. The motion carries. Thank you. The next item is the high school literature set revised list. This is a study item, Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Pratt, members of the board, Mrs. Penn.
Good evening, President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, and members of the board. It is my honor to come tonight and share with you the recommendations that are coming out of our high school literature review committee. As a reminder, we have two high school literature review committees that work kind of side by side. One of those committees looks at books that are currently on administrative hold but have been previously approved. That is not what we're bringing forward tonight. This is the work of our longstanding literature review committee that was put in place back in 2008. And on the committee, we have teachers and administrators from each of the high school sites. We have curriculum folks, and books go through a process before they even come to the committee. The first step is that the teacher takes those resources to their instructional team lead. The instructional team lead, if in support, takes those to the principal. The principal, if in support, takes those to the literature review committee, where we place at least 2 readers. We've been trying to put at least 3 readers on each of these books. They are read, and then we come back and have a conversation about whether or not that is a book that we can collectively as a group feel good bringing forward. We have been running this through the lens of the new legislation and making sure that we are in compliance with that. Part of that compliance is having parent opt-in consent. We are going a step above and beyond, and we're asking for parent opt-in consent on every single book that is used at the high school level. And we're trying to be really intentional about providing parents with enough information that they can make an informed decision. Some of the feedback that we've received is that if we are simply asking parents to provide consent based on a title, that it's time intensive. And I know as many members of this board have been reading all of the books, it places parents in a position where to gather information, they feel that they may have to read all of the books. So we have a form. In our form, it provides a summary, it provides the connection to the standard, and it provides the significance or why that particular book is being selected. And in addition, it provides a summary of hotspots so that it draws parents' attention to what might be in that book that we want to make sure that they're aware of. We're not wanting parents to provide consent without information. So we're reaching out with the information that we have. If they're able to read the book above and beyond that, then we highly encourage that. The next step after the books go to the literature review committee is that they go to site council. As Mr. Hurley mentioned, we don't often get feedback on our textbooks. Historically, we have not gotten a lot of feedback from our site council. For this particular group of books, we did get some feedback from 2 different site councils that I want to make sure and share with you. From Micah Mountain, we had site council say that they personally are in support of bringing all of the books forward. That's why they are coming forward. But they wanted to also state that they could see that parents may have that outside of their group, other parents may have concerns with Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man and The Awakening. And those are books that have been used in high schools for many, many years. I have been out of high school for an extremely long amount of time. And while I was in high school, Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man was required reading for me. That's all I'll say about that. And then from the Andrada Site Council, it was similar feedback as far as the Site Council supported bringing the books forward. But as they had done some searching on some of the titles, wanted to make the statement that they could see that other parents may have concerns, not with Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man or The Awakening, but the titles that they wanted to draw attention to were Little Fires Everywhere and We Were Liars. So I want to make sure that I am providing that information to you. I know this is a study item, so there's not a recommendation or a vote, but if there's any additional information that I can provide to you, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. This is just a study item. Are there comments or questions? Ms. Tibbet.
I have a quick question. On the material, there's a number and an L, 920L or 600L. What is that?
Great question, Mr. Green.
President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, members of the board, that is referring to a Lexile level, and a Lexile level is connected to a particular range for student grade levels. So it would, and as you look at that, the lower the Lexile level, the lower the reading, the lower the reading level. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the content would be appropriate for a younger child, but the reading is more accessible to a larger range of student abilities. The higher the level, the more complex and the more advanced the reader would have to be able to access the content of that text.
Mr. King?
We didn't get the, We've Always Lived in the Castle yet, but these 7 I've actually have made it through. So I'll give you these, and they all have the little sticky notes in them.
Thank you.
So you can see like all the little potential hotspots in them, all have little colored doodads in them. So.
And President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, and members of the board, I appreciate the reminder of the We've Always Lived in the Castle. That book came in, but it was left outside during the rain and it was completely soaked. And I don't know that we have the replacement books in, but I'll follow up to check on that for you.
Thank you. Oh, you pull up, you could.
Yep. And then the We Were Liars with that 600 Lexile score, is that really be appropriate for juniors and seniors? While the content is up there, I do agree. The reading ability, do you think that would really be challenging more for the juniors and seniors?
Good question, Mr. Cruz.
President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, members of the board, that is a conversation that we have had repeatedly within the Literature Review Committee. And there are several books that have not been moved forward because the Lexile level was not something that that we would want to put on the high school a book list. An example of that is Stargirl. It's a wonderful book that middle school wants, elementary wants, high school wants. Everyone wants to be able to expose students to that wonderful text, but we didn't agree to bring it forward at the high school level because the Lexile was low. We've had conversations around how many books should we have at lower Lexile levels. It's important to have some because not all of our students can take off at the same particular place, especially coming out of the pandemic. We have more students who need access points at different places. I think it's a really important question. It's one that we wrestle with, and it's one that, although we don't bring every book forward, we also wonder if we're bringing too many books forward with a lower Lexile level. And so in the conversations that we've been having, some of the things that teachers are expressing is that even if the Lexile level is low, the ideas and the content and the themes of the book are challenging, and they're ones that they that have depth and that they can use in a more complex way, even if the Lexile level is a little lower. So it's a place where we are working to partner with teachers and bring forward when it seems that we can support that, but it's one that we have some of the same questions that you're bringing forward.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. Other questions, Mr. Bester?
I'm interested in regards to the 4 items of literature that you brought up earlier, as far as what were parents' objects of contention or concerns with these particular items of literature.
Just to clarify, the books that Mrs. Penn referenced from the site council, is that?
Yes,
thank
from
you.
Michael Mountain and
Andrada.
Andrada.
Okay, just want to clarify. Mrs. Penn.
President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, it was the reference to sexuality in the books. And that is at different levels in the books, where Portrait of an Artist of a Young Man, it has that as part of the theme. It's not that it's graphic, but it's present. I may not be being perfectly clear, but there's a level at which the sexual content triggers the requirement of parent consent. And we're really, really careful to identify any sexual content, even if it's not at the level that would trigger the requirement of that parent consent. So the books, the Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man and The Awakening, I think are very far from that line of where it would trigger that requirement. And I think that Little Fires Everywhere and We Were Liars is closer to the line that would require parent consent.
And as a addition to that, just as a reminder, all books require parental consent by our process.
Excellent, thank you.
Did you have any follow-up questions, or you're good? Mr. King, did you have your hand up? No, I'm sorry. It looked like you did, Ms. Anderson.
I guess I had 2. One is, from a parent perspective, how much time, is there a time that teachers are to give to parents before they use it in the classroom? Because I mean, I appreciate that they give a summary, but like Chris, I've been trying to read the books and it's been really good for me. Obviously I'm on the board, but like as a parent, like being able to read it and I'm a reader, so I enjoy that. But is there a time frame? Like what what does that kind of look like, or is it different for each?
Great question, Mr. Chris.
Mrs. Penn.
President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, we have not established a set amount of time. What that looks like in practicality is that books that are being used first quarter, parents have less time than they would have for books that are being used later in the year, just because that the syllabus and the request for parent consent goes out at the beginning of the semester, and then instruction starts, and so there's less time. Parents would have would have more time for books following that. I think that's a really important piece, and it's something that we can wrap back around to and talk about what might be some options with that. But currently it's that information goes out. It goes out before the book is taught, but sometimes that timeline between when it goes out is a short window.
Great question. Do you have a follow-up, Mr. Griff? No. Great question. Did you have a second one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there a point where, say you had a class that there are quite a few parents that opted out, is there a point where it would be, to me, I guess it just doesn't make sense to even move forward with a book in a class I will tell you from a parent perspective, I think it's great that there's another option for kids, but if the student's taken out, they're missing so much. And is there a point where like, if there's so many, that this kind of goes, we should be doing something different. Like, has that situation arisen in any classes? I guess I just think of one of my kids who is very academic, and if I, as a parent, had said, I'd rather you just not read this, like it would be a huge detriment to her. She would lose out on a lot in that class. Has that happened? I guess is my question. Mr. Cruz?
Mrs. Penn, add more detail to this, but my understanding just historically is we don't have a lot of students opting out. This has been the first year that we've had the requirement for the opt-in. So honestly, it's something I think we can track probably a little more closely, because we are now more actively, we are actively asking for a parent's response to this, whereas before it was the other way around. If there's other to add, I anecdotally, from my perspective, I haven't heard of a lot of parents not signing that regarding particular books, but I'm certain that if that were the case, we can start tracking that in a better way now because of the process we have in place this time.
Listen, President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, and members of the board, that is another conversation that we have had in our committee quite frequently as well, especially as we were starting to look through the lens of that legislation. And what I can tell you is that, yes, Mr. Cruz is correct. We don't have a lot of parents opting out. In addition, our teachers don't want to be working with books that a lot of parents are opting out of. They want books that everyone can participate in, and their focus is on the student rather than the literature. And if that situation were to come up, the conversations that we have had and the teachers that I've talked to about it would be monitoring that and would be making that adjustment. They would be reading that very closely. It's not ideal for the student or for the teacher to be out of that conversation. And so they want to find books that are complex and engaging and draw student attention and make students want to read and participate. And they want their students to be experiencing that together. So that's that balance they're looking for, is what can be the most appealing, meaningful literature that we can provide students, but still have them together as a group.
Other questions? I have a few questions. So I know we have 9 books coming through, and it feels like some years are a little heavy, some years are a little light. Does this feel pretty average?
President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, and members of the board, yes, this is pretty average. It may be slightly higher than what is typical, and we typically bring books to the board twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. We had that on break for a couple of years because we were going through COVID and it was just very complicated. And so now that we've returned to that, it's been a little heavier, but it's not outrageous as compared to what we've had previously. I would say 7 is probably a real average number.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I just, Mrs. Penn made the statement early, we need to look at how are we collapsing the 2 committees, one that's been looking at this through the lens of the recent legislation and this particular process that Mrs. Penn is talking about today. I think we need to think about what that looks like and how are we bringing additional books forward. And not only that, but we've been doing this process since 2008. So is the decision that stood in 2008 still relevant to today? Is the teacher still here who taught that book? I just think there's some tweaks to collapsing those 2 processes and also looking at our process moving forward relative to your question about how many titles come forward, we don't, if we just don't do anything, then we're gonna end up with a list of 1,000 titles. Is that what we want? Are those 1,000 titles useful, or is that something that there should be kind of a circular process on continuing to review those? I'm just making that, didn't ask the question, but I'm just making that kind of a statement as we're moving through this process in general.
Okay. And then just a clarification. So these books are for teachers to teach. This is not dictating what books are in the classroom, correct? I mean, the classroom, the libraries, these are completely separate.
Correct.
Okay.
These are only approval for literature that can be taught as part of instruction, whole class instruction.
Thank you. Did you raise your hand? I feel like it
I
keeps in
did.
you.
I had
Okay.
one more.
Okay.
Do our neighboring districts, the other districts in the area actually go through a similar literary review process where they're actually doing it at like site council level, school level, bringing their stuff to the boards? So.
Great question, Mr. Cruz.
Short answer is no. This is kind of about, we've asked around. I mean, I think we have the most comprehensive program, certainly in our region that I'm aware of. So, do you have anything else to add to that?
President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, and members of the board, what is more typical is to have set literature that is designated by grade level, and that is what the teachers use. So the more typical default is that the teacher has much less of a voice in which selections are used in the classroom.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, I know you had one more.
Yeah, I think, and I guess it isn't a question. I actually just want to relay a thank you to Micah Mountain and Drata Site Councils, because I feel like that's where it needs to, like, I know it's coming here, but we need parents' voices there. And I know it's not just parents, it's staff too, right? It's staff and parents. I've sat on site council at schools in the district. And so I feel like at many times things just pass through and they don't, it's just like, hey, here's a check mark. Great. That's great. So I am grateful that they are digging in and looking, because these, from a parent's perspective, like, I just am grateful that they did that and look at two different schools, I just think, isn't that interesting? Like, our schools, even though we are the Vail School District, our cultures sometimes are still different at each school. And so I am appreciative of these site council. I just wanted to make that comment because I would love to see all site councils looking a little bit more at what's coming past them, and in that case. So thank you for sharing that.
Okay, I know we're getting late. I do have one very, very last question. So on here, on the list, it says it has the mature content. Is that us determining that? Is it a website that we're getting that from, Mr. Cruz?
President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, and members of the board, that is coming from the conversation that the Literature Review Committee has based on those readers who have read through it, and they're looking for that, highlighting it, and then they're bringing those, and that's part of the conversation that they have.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the reason I ask is when we look at these and we say, oh my gosh, everything is profane, or everything has violence, or everything has sexual content. And my husband and I use a website to kind of screen movies before we see it, to see if it's appropriate to be honest, us to see it, or for our children, whatever. And sometimes it'll say, even on sexual content, it'll say, a man and woman embrace in a hug. You know what I mean? Like, am I considering that sexual content? I wouldn't, but I appreciate that they say everything. They're just gonna. So can you tell me, when we say profane, or when we say violence, when we say drug use, any of that, do you guys have kind of a threshold, or do you?
President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, members of the board, we talked about like trying to put together a rubric or something to make it more concrete, but none of that really worked.
Okay.
So what we do is err on the side of caution, and then we try to put some description in the summary that helps clarify what that is. So in some of these examples, the book, We Were Liars, it references sexual intercourse, but that doesn't actually happen. It's not, it's just, it was referenced. So even something like that then becomes a sexuality kind of trigger for that hotspot.
Got it.
So we're really, really conservative on that. So you'll see a lot more of those hotspots mentioned. And then, as I said, try to have more of a description of what that actually is in the summary piece for parents.
Okay, that's helpful to know kind of where that line is. So thank you. Okay, any other? Yes, Mr. Bester.
For Mr. Caruth. Earlier you mentioned in regards to revamping, rehoning, consolidation of the literary review process. And I guess short answer, does that include the 1,000 books that have already been reviewed?
Thank you, Mr. Buster and members of the board. What we have in fact done over the last year because of the legislation is all the books from 2008 forward, we put on administrative hold with the exception of books that have gone through the new committee this year to say, what are we teaching first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, through the lens of the recent legislation and also frankly through the lens of some of the cultural pieces that are there. So that is, all of those books have been approved and or reapproved. In this case, this would be approving books that were never on that previous list. All other books are still on administrative hold. So we need to do something with those remaining books. One, what do we do? I mean, my personal feeling is that leaving them on perpetual administrative hold isn't the right thing to do. We need to take something, we need to do something with that, whether that's taking action on these are the books that are now we're using moving forward and all those things need to go back through the process, or whether we're bringing additional ones forward. I'm not prepared to make a recommendation around that, but that's kind of where we are. It feels like I don't want to just, well, my preference is not to just leave all those others in limbo, but to make some statement about them. And most of those titles are books that are not of earnest interest to the teachers who are currently here and wanting to use them. Those books are already gone through this most recent committee because teachers are saying, hey, these are things I want to teach. These are things that I'm actively wanting to do. So Mrs. Penn and I and some others have had some cursory conversations about what to do with those two things. But that's kind of where we're at in that regard.
President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, when that legislation was passed, it was passed the beginning of July and then was going into effect when we came back from second quarter. So we needed a process in which we could approve books and know what was happening with the books in regards to the legislation. We could not possibly vet all 400 and some books that were on the list. So we prioritized by having teachers submit the books that they wanted to teach. And so we've gone through that process for a year now. And so the conversation is, do we continue to, has that committee served its purpose? Because we've had a year to prioritize those books. And is there a need to go through the rest of them in the same process that we're doing currently? Or can we say there is not strong teacher interest and we can go through the full process? The benefit of the process that we put in place for those books that had already been board approved was that it was more timely, and we needed that timeliness to be able to get them into the classroom in a way that met the requirements of the legislation. This process is slower. We only come to the board twice a year. It takes longer to do that. So we may be at a place where we can take those other books back through this slower process now. And that's what we're evaluating.
Any other comments or questions? I know this is an important topic. Thank you so much for your work, and also for my fellow board members for all that you're doing, reading and asking great questions. Okay, this is a study item. Thank you, Mrs. Penn. I know you're staying up here for a couple more though. Our next item is 2022-23 301 school goals, and this is an action item.
Thank you, President Pratt, members of the board. I'm also watching the clock and realizing I know it's getting
to my YouTube channel. That's it. Welcome back. Bye. Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel and welcome back to another video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I mostly just really wanted to play with these vinyl sheets, so I'm going to show you a few different ways that you can use them. This is more of a kind of inspiration video. We're going to be using all of these beautiful new floral sheets from Flynn Sisters Supply Shop. These were all just released in a pack on the website. They will be restocked, I believe, when the next pack launches. So keep your eye on the website. I will link the website down in the description box for you, along with the discount code. So if you got this pack, you are lucky because these are beautiful patterns. So we have 5 different floral patterns. And in this video, I'm going to use all 5 of them. We're going to do 5 different cup designs. So I hope you're ready. I just was so excited to use these. I couldn't pick just one to do in a video. So I decided to just go for it and do all 5 and make 5 different cups. I'll show you these a little bit more up close, obviously, as we work with them, but just to go over them quickly. So the first pattern we have is Courage, which is a really pretty like bright white. And then we have Empower, which is kind of dark and moody. Same with Self-Love. Self-Love is also kind of a dark and like moody, romantic floral. And then we have my favorite. This is Marvelous. It's got a really pretty like velvety turquoise background. I really love it. And then finally we have Bloom. This is a really pretty bright spring orangey pink. And then with the pack, you get a decal sheet, and each decal coordinates with one of the patterns. These are all printed with white ink, so they will pop on the backgrounds. You guys can see it's got the white ink behind it. So excited to use these. I really hope you guys enjoy this video. I'll have everything I'm using linked down below in the description box, of course. And let me know what your favorite of these 5 cups that we are gonna make in this video is down below in the comments. I'm interested to hear what your favorite is. I know what my favorite is, but I wanna know which one is your favorite. Okay, I think that's it. I hope you guys like the video. Let's go. Tumbler design we are going to work on is this big boy. This is a 40-ounce skinny straight mug from Craft Haven, and we're going to use the Marvelous pattern on this tumbler. Full sheet of vinyl is going to fit on this cup almost. I love this pattern so much. I didn't want to cut too much of it away when I wrapped it around the cup, so I picked the biggest cup that I had, and we are going to wrap this entire cup with the full sheet of vinyl. Before we start wrapping, I do want to cut away all of this white excess from each side so that we are only wrapping the tumbler, of course, with the vinyl. I'm going to use my paper trimmer here to make sure that I cut straight because I don't trust my own hands to do it. Now, when I wrap this around my tumbler, I want the seam to be in line with the handle. So I'm gonna measure how this will fit here, and I am gonna leave a little tiny bit at the bottom of the tumbler. We're gonna glitter the bottom later, and I don't wanna worry about cutting off any excess from down there. So I'm gonna lay this just a smidgen above the bottom edge of the cup. So once I've got that kind of measured out and placed, I'm gonna take my Sharpie and I'm gonna make 2 little marks on the vinyl where I need to cut so that it will fit in between the handle. Okay, so you can see my little slits here, or my little marks where I'm gonna make my slits. So I'm just gonna take my scissors and I'm gonna cut about an inch, maybe a little more than an inch, slit where each of those little marks are with my Sharpie. Just 2 little slits like that. And I'm gonna work my vinyl into these areas with my little slits here. Once I know that those are the correct places for my handle, I'm going to cut little notches. You see how there's a little bit of like an overhang here? I'm gonna cut just like a little tiny notch, super duper small, just like that. So then it will slide right onto our handle area. And I'm gonna do the same thing here. So a little notch, and we're gonna have some overlap in the end when we wrap the vinyl around. So if you cut these a little too big, like I think this one is a little bit too big, we'll be able to cover it, it'll be okay. So I'm just gonna slide that in just like that. Now we are gonna cut just a little bit of excess off from here. So the seam ends up here, but I always like a little bit of overlap in my vinyl wraps because I don't want any gapping or anything in between the vinyl. I'd rather have a little bit of overlap. So I'm gonna tape down each of these edges to my tumbler. So I'm gonna cut just this little bit of backing away. So you can see I'm keeping each of my other sections secured down to the cup to ensure that my vinyl is placed in the right way. And then I'm just gonna go through and carefully, this is the hardest area right around the handle here. I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna remove the backing. Cut it away. And then lay it back down in the same way it was laid originally. Just like that. Okay, and I made a big mistake. I didn't check to see if these were gonna lay straight. So that's my fault. We're gonna just go with it and we're gonna deal with that later. I will have to cut the excess off, but you know what? It's okay. We're just gonna go for it. With this kind of pattern, it doesn't really matter if it's perfectly straight. Ideally, I would have laid it down perfectly straight, but it's not the end of the world for patterns like this because the pattern isn't going to meet up seamlessly anyway. So it'll be okay. All right, so once I've got the full sheet of backing like kind of back together and pulled away, I'm gonna take my big squeegee. This is from the Bowen. You can find them on Etsy. If you just search the Bowen LLC, it will come up. And I'm gonna go in and just push the vinyl onto the cup, and I'm pushing this backing away in the process. And before I get to this other side, I'm gonna make sure that all of this tape is gone. And I'm just gonna keep going with the vinyl until I hit the handle. And you can see it doesn't really matter that we didn't lay it straight, not a big deal. So once I've reached the handle, I'm gonna butt this vinyl up against here, as you can see, just like that. And I'm gonna cut again a little slit here on the back side of the handle, right from the bottom, so that I can pull this vinyl around that edge of the handle. And then from there, I know I've got my overlap way over here, so I've got room. I just wanna cut a little bit around the flowers just so that it doesn't look, you know, like a straight seam line. It just kind of blends in with like the busyness of the pattern, I guess. That's totally personal preference. If you wanna just cut a straight line, go for it. Whatever is easier for you, do that. And then I'm gonna repeat the same process up at the top of the cup. I'm gonna cut right along that handle, pull that tightly. And again, my seam is gonna be right in the middle here. So I'm just gonna kind of cut around that pattern and get rid of the excess. And now finally, we have this section here. Again, we're gonna have to cut little slits or little notches where the handle is. And so I'm just gonna go in and carefully cut those along the inside of the handle, just like this. And then cut along those notches where the handle is so that we can slide this piece of vinyl through the handle. So we'll just push it right through, pull it tightly, and then I'm gonna cut the excess off again right in the middle of the handle. So it kind of, you can see, just camouflages that seam a little bit. It just looks a little better in my opinion. Okay, so here's our cup fully wrapped. Now, before we deal with the bottom, I was trying to avoid doing that, but anyway, before we deal with the bottom, we're gonna pull this vinyl as tightly as we can up over this top rim so that we can trim off all of this excess up here first. I'm gonna take my craft knife. I'm actually gonna put a new blade on my knife. You guys know how I do with the new blades, I love them. And you'll see how much easier it is to cut off the excess with a brand new blade versus an older blade. I can really just glide my knife over this top rim and it will just cut through that vinyl like butter. You can see just cuts it like nothing. And I'm cutting this at an angle so we have a slight little line of stainless steel. And we want that to form the final seal with our epoxy. So you just want a little tiny line. It doesn't need to be anything super significant. You just want to start to establish that now. Make it smooth so that when you sand your cup down, you don't get those rough kind of like sanded edges. It's just a nice smooth cut line down there. So now I'm gonna fix my bottom mistake here. I'm gonna take some of this painter's tape and I'm gonna lay it on my cup here, like at my shortest point, and I'm gonna lay it as straight as I can. Not very good at laying straight lines, but I'm gonna do my best here to get this to be as straight as possible on this bottom edge. And then I'm gonna follow this tape line around the bottom to ensure that the bottom line is straight. So I'm just following the tape, following that edge, making sure that I cut this as straight as possible. So I've cut that by hand and I'm gonna remove this tape and make sure that everything is straight. To my eye, it doesn't look straight. So I'm actually gonna use my cup edging tool. Now this went up a little bit higher than I wanted to go initially, but that's okay. I would rather have a straight line down here than have a like wonky line and have it go down lower. So that's our finish at the bottom. We've got our finish at the top, and now we're gonna move on to the next cup. Next sheet we're gonna work with is the Empower sheet. So for this cup, we're gonna do a half split design. I've already got my cup here that has been spray painted with some maroon spray paint. I just decided to paint my cup first. You don't have to do that. Now I'm gonna speed through splitting my cup in half. I do have tutorials on my channel showing you in depth how to do that. I'll link a few down below in the description box for you so you can see that process in a little bit more detail. Now I think for this half, I want to include like all of the florals. So I'm gonna cut from this edge, leave a little bit of the excess here. And I'm gonna make a mark where my tape line is, a little bit past where the edge of my tape is. And that's where I'm gonna trim the vinyl down. So we'll have a little bit of each floral in our half. Okay, now when I place this on my tumbler, I want this full floral in here for sure because that's our full like image. So I'm gonna make sure that when I place this, that is in the image, in frame here, basically. And then I'm gonna cut this piece off and I'm gonna hold on to this because we're gonna use it on the bottom of our tumbler later. So I'm just gonna cut this off as closely as I feel comfortable, having a little bit of excess, and we're gonna hold on to this. I think I like them this way facing up. So I'm just gonna make sure that they're still on there good. So now I've got my vinyl positioned. I'm gonna take another piece of tape and just secure one end of the vinyl to my cup like that. I'm going to pull away a little bit of this backing and then smooth the vinyl onto the tumbler. Again, I'm kind of speeding through this process. This video is very, very long already, so I will again have those videos where I go into detail on these half wraps and how to apply the vinyl and everything down below in the description box for you. And there's our half wrap here. All right, moving into our third cup design, we're going to kind of speed through this process as well. I'm using a 20-ounce camper mug from Craft Haven for this, and I've cut my vinyl down just about maybe a little less than in half. I wanted the vinyl to go mostly up this half of the cup. As you can see, I'm going to place it on the bottom portion of the cup, and we're going to do a waterfall glitter design on this later. So that's why I haven't cut off that white border or edge from the top of the vinyl. That's going to be kind of a guide for me later when I go to spray paint for my glitter application. Now you'll notice that on this mug, I wrapped the vinyl around a little bit differently than we did in the very beginning. When I'm wrapping around just like one handle or one piece of the handle instead of both, sometimes I'll use a little bit of a different technique that just shows you that there is more than one way to do things. Moving into our next cup design, we're using a 30-ounce skinny straight tumbler from Craft Haven again, and I'm going to split it in half vertically. We've got our cup split in half here, and what I want to do with this pattern in particular is wrap half the cup and then also have the pattern continue here. Now, it would maybe be easier to wrap the whole cup in vinyl and then just carve out the section that you want for your half, but I don't know why. I just didn't want to take this off the backing, you know, like I wanted to have that section. Maybe we'll put it on the bottom. So I'm going to do a little bit of a weird thing here. And we're going to have this diagonal section here on the top, we're going to glitter. And that's the space we don't want vinyl, obviously. So I'm just going to map that out now with my tape. I want it to be kind of steep a little bit here. So I want it to be a little bit larger. So I'm going to just tape that off like that. So this will all be vinyl down here. It'll just continue, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna trim off this taped section. This half is all vinyl, and then the vinyl is gonna continue here. So I'm gonna get rid of this underneath where the tape line is. I'm gonna try to cut straight, as straight as possible. Okay. Same on this side. I'm cutting underneath that diagonal line of tape that we just made. I'm going to use this straight line here as my guide for wrapping my vinyl. And when we get to this end, we'll make sure that we can salvage this area of the vinyl to use for the bottom. Okay, so I'm taking my vinyl and I've got a piece of tape on one end, and I'm going to try my best to line up that edge of the vinyl with the edge of my tape that I've already laid down. And I'm going to lay the vinyl down with that tape. I'm going to trim off the excess from the top and save that for later. And then I'm going to basically just wrap the entire cup with vinyl the same way that I do with a full wrap. But once we get to the point where that little cutout is, or that little diagonal section is, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to pretty roughly just cut it out by hand. I wanted to save the vinyl as much as I could. In hindsight though, like I said earlier, it would be much, much easier to just cut the section out after you did a full wrap. Totally up to you, whatever route you want to go. But as you can see here, I'm just taking my scissors and kind of following that diagonal tape line to get rid of that vinyl from there. Now I've got this little like section of vinyl that I can use for something else. So after I had all of the vinyl wrapped on the cup, I followed those tape lines again to just clean up the edges and make sure that everything was trimmed up in the right way. And then I cut off all of the excess at the seams as well. And with this pattern, thank goodness, you can't tell which side the seam is on. Everything met up really perfectly, and you really have to look super close to find the seam in the vinyl, which I was so happy with. So then I finished off the top, cutting off all of the excess as usual. And now we're going to move into our next steps.
All right, so we've got all 5 of our cups wrapped here. For the self-love vinyl, my phone cut out and didn't film me applying it, but I just did another full wrap on this one. So we've got our half wrap split, our full wrap big boy mug, our full wrap self-love, our kind of half diagonal deal wrap, and then our 20-ounce camper mug with the bloom pattern. So now we're gonna go through and tape off and glitter each of these open areas and continue on with these designs. I'm really excited about how they're looking so far. I don't know which one I'm gonna keep for myself. Before we get into glittering, I'm gonna tape off all of the areas that we don't wanna get any glitter on. So for our Empower pattern, I just took off the tape from the 1/2 and replaced it over the vinyl so that we have the vinyl side half taped off, and we're gonna glitter this side. And then the same with this one, I already taped off all of the vinyl areas, so we're gonna glitter the bottom of the tumbler and this open white section. And then with this camper mug, you can see I've done kind of an interesting tape job here. The bottom is exposed, the handle is open, and then I've got a little bit of the vinyl exposed as well. We're gonna do a waterfall pattern down the cup. So I wanna go over this white border. That's kind of my guideline. That's why I didn't cut it off. It's kind of my guideline for like where my paint will stop when I paint this. And then we'll just waterfall glitter. So a little bit of glitter will get in this area. And then we'll do the same glitter on the handle that we do on the bottom. I'm gonna quickly tape off the bottoms and the handle of our full wraps so that we can glitter those as well. Now with our self-love tumbler, I'm not gonna do any glitter or anything on this. I'm just gonna paint the bottom with solid black spray paint. Now for this 40-ounce skinny tumbler, I'm essentially masking off the entire thing. I don't wanna get any spray paint anywhere other than the handle and the bottom. So I'm just going to tape off around the handle, and then I'm gonna wrap a sheet of scrapbook paper around the cup to protect the rest of it. You can also use saran wrap or whatever you have, as long as you protect your cup from spray paint overspray, especially because we don't have any epoxy on our tumbler yet. So if we get any spray paint on our cup, it's going to be really difficult to remove it. If you would feel more comfortable doing a coat of epoxy before you add your glitter or whatever to the handle and the bottom of the cup, you absolutely can. It's just personal preference. I just like to glitter the handle when there's no epoxy on it. I find that it's a little bit easier to get smooth rather than trying to epoxy it, then glitter it, then epoxy it again. But again, totally personal preference, whatever you want to do. Now I taped off this entire area where my handle is, and I'm just going to use a piece of scrapbook paper to mask off the rest. So all of our cup is protected except for obviously the handle and the bottom.
Now for this 40-ounce skinny mug, I wanted to make a custom glitter mix for the handle and the bottom. I wanted to try and match that really pretty tone of the velvet background. So I'm going to make a 50-50 mix, 1-to-1 ratio of Capricorn and Mr. Lomax, both from Peachy Olive Glitters.
Okay, I've got my epoxy mixed up here. I am not wearing my respirator because I'm talking to you, but make sure that you wear a respirator when you are working in your area. So I'm gonna take and put a very thin layer of epoxy all over this half of my cup. Like I'm just barely dipping my finger into my cup of epoxy and just making sure I have a really thin, even coat. starting with our Empower